This video is neither a theatrical production nor a scene from a movie. It is a real gypsy funeral. Before burying the deceased, they celebrate for several days. Yes, celebrate. They sing, dance, and treat guests, because gypsies believe that the soul must not be pulled back by sorrow. Then the body is placed in the tomb, and along with the deceased, they always place their favorite things. It could be a watch, a phone, jewelry, or a game console. Yes, a PlayStation in a coffin is not a joke, but a part of modern gypsy culture, because you need something to do in the afterlife too. Gypsies, eternal travelers, eternal outsiders. They have no country of their own, but they have their own laws. In this video, we'll follow them from India to Byzantium, from a dirty camp to a palace worth 30 million. We'll find out why they never pay taxes, why getting married at 12 is considered normal, and why a funeral of a gypsy baron can look cooler than a wedding of a TikTok star.
The Romani people are the most peaceful and calm people.
They are feared, judged, oppressed, but they do not disappear. Who are they really? Where do they come from? And why, even in the 21st century, are they seen as unwanted guests anywhere they go? Gypsies are a people who seem to appear out of nowhere. It was once believed they came from Egypt, hence the word gypsy, supposedly shortened from Egyptian. Some suggested that they were wandering Byzantine sorcerers or some forgotten tribes from the east, but only modern genetics has provided a clear answer. They originated in India in the 3rd to 5th centuries AD, and here it's worth delving into the context of that era. In ancient India, the entire population was divided into castes. Brahmins were the top of the pyramid. Priests, sages, teachers, sacred and untouchable in a good way. Next came the Kshatriyas, warriors, rulers, protectors, then the Vaishyas, traders, farmers, artisans, and almost at the very bottom, the Shudras, servants, laborers, workers, and below all, the outcasts or untouchables. They were not even allowed to touch people from higher castes because it was considered pollution. Their life consisted of cleaning toilets, disposing of animal carcasses, collecting garbage, processing leather, work that no one else wanted to do. It was a fate from which there was no escape. It is from this stratum that the ancestors of modern gypsies come. In Europe, the Roma were perceived as Christian refugees from the Middle East. People sympathized with them, helped them, and looked at them with curiosity. Unfamiliar songs, bright clothing, and their own rhythm of life, completely different and exotic. But over time, this exoticism became a problem. Roma did not fit into the new rules, they had no documents, paid no taxes, and did not settle down. And when their wandering lifestyle was equated with breaking the law, they began to be persecuted. Bans followed. And after them, myths like Roma stole children, cast curses, carried diseases, ate people. Yes, even the myth of cannibalism. And it was at this time that the image of the exotic wanderers turned into that of the enemy of society. The widespread belief of a genetic or cultural predisposition of gypsies to crime is a myth. In Byzantium and the Ottoman Empire, the crime rate among the Roma was the same as that of any other people. The problems began in Western Europe when, from the 15th century, the states began to crack down on the Roma through persecution and expulsion. The Roma were simply stripped of their right to work. Their crafts disappeared, and they still had to survive somehow. In Prussia, there was a law to execute all Roma over the age of 18. In Sweden, executions without trial. In France, deportations. And in Spain, they first tried to reform them. In the 18th century, King Charles III obligated Roma to marry non-Roma, change their clothing, and take Castilian names. But within a few decades, it turned into one of the largest persecutions in history. The Great Gypsy Roundup of 1749. In a single day, over 12,000 Roma were arrested throughout Spain. Men were sent to hard labor, women and children to monasteries and prisons. In France, meanwhile, Roma were put on display at fairs as a living ethnographic show. dances, magic tricks, and wild music. People didn't pay for the concert, they paid for the opportunity to see the wild person in the flesh. And when survival in the West became nearly impossible, Roma camps moved eastward. In Poland, Lithuania, Russia, and the Balkans, the Roma were treated more calmly. In the Russian Empire, they worked, women told fortunes and sang, and men repaired goods, forged metal, and traded horses. In Romania, meanwhile, the Roma were official slaves. They belonged to monasteries, boyars, and the state. They were sold. Slavery was abolished only in 1856. The Ottoman Empire, on the contrary, gave them more freedom. Roma could trade, travel, and convert to Islam, often for practical reasons rather than out of faith. Religion in general among Roma has always been adaptive. Orthodoxy, Catholicism, and Islam depending on the country, but always with something of their own added. After the revolution, the Roma, like everyone else, found themselves in a new reality, without a ruler, but with a plan. The Soviet government began to impose its own order with an attempt to tame everyone who stood even slightly apart from the system. Did the Roma fit in? Not at all, so they had to be integrated, urgently, even if they never asked for it. For the authorities, the main issue was their wandering lifestyle. The Soviet model did not tolerate anarchy. Everyone had to be in place, with a residence permit, with a plan, and with a weeder in their hands. Or at least with a wrench. But here they were. Camps, fortune-telling, horses, and songs by the campfire. How did that fit into the 5-year plan? The answer, through collective farms. Starting in the 1920s, 52 collective farms were created specifically for the Roma. They were given land and money, 500 to 1,000 rubles each, to set up homesteads, start farming, register their residence, and settle down. Some took advantage of the assistance, but the majority still remained in their camps. According to official data, only 5% of wandering gypsies actually became collective farmers, and even then, mostly just on paper. In 1933, amid famine, dozens of camps moved to Moscow. By that time, in the capital, there had already formed a whole network of camps, and when the passport system was introduced, the authorities decided to remove undesirable elements. In just one summer month, almost 5,500 Roma were deported from Moscow to Siberia. In total, over 10,000 were deported in the pre-war years, but there were also those who cooperated. Some joined the Red Army, some even became partisans. During the war, 11 representatives of the Roma people were awarded the title of Hero of the Soviet Union. Interestingly, it was under Khrushchev, with the introduction of mandatory registration, that most Roma finally settled down. Their wandering way of life ended. And although it marked the end of their traditions, many still remember the late USSR as a stable and even peaceful time. In a world where most things are governed by laws, for the Roma, it's different. They have traditions instead of laws, elders instead of courts, and barons instead of police. Everything is decided within the community, and if you are part of this world, you must play by its rules. The baron is not just the eldest, he is the center of gravity, a judge, a guarantor of justice, and a father figure, all in one. If the baron says, expelled, you will be expelled. If he says, forgive, you will be believed. His word carries more weight than any law. Trials are held not in offices, but in courtyards. Elders and heads of families gather in a circle, hear both sides, and deliberate. It's called Kris, a Roma court. The worst punishment is exile. You are not beaten or imprisoned, you simply cease to exist. No greeting, no entry into homes, no handshakes, no conversation. The whole life is as closed as possible. Families are large. One house might hold 10, 20, or even 30 people. Life has no walls, no privacy. Everyone knows everything about everyone. Women have strictly defined roles. You don't sit at the table with men, and if you say something wrong, they can discipline you, and not always with words. In some families, like it's still considered normal for a husband to set his wife straight, because that's the way it's always been. Young people sometimes try to break out to see a different life and to learn something new, but the community is a tight circle. If you step outside, you will be quickly pulled back in or cast out. Education? Formally, yes. In practice, very selective. Girls are rarely sent to school. They are expected to prepare for marriage, household chores, and family life. School is unnecessary. Boys might be allowed to study, but not for long. By the age of 10, they are expected to do something, help, earn money, and be useful. Trying to go beyond is always a risk of losing what is yours. Everything here is built on hierarchy. There are the wealthy and everyone else. The poor pay a tithe to the rich without complaint, because they believe the strong must protect the weak. This is not seen as exploitation, it is an agreement. If you leave, you become an outsider to everyone. For a Roma, being without a community is like being without a body. When a community lives in isolation, sooner or later it develops its own survival schemes, and they are not always legal. In some camps, it's a crime, drugs, smuggling, theft. In modern times, another form has emerged. Organized groups the media call the Roma Mafia. It has been recorded in France, Germany, Kazakhstan, Russia, and Ukraine. Most often, it is small or large-scale heroin trafficking. But there is a context. Since the 1990s, after the collapse of the USSR, the Roma lost even the niches where they once survived: crafts, street trading, and fortune telling. They were gradually pushed out of legal business, and when there is no work, no education, and no social elevator, some people end up where there is money, even if it is dangerous.
People say that a gypsy will steal something, but these are just myths. It's not true. The Romani people are actually the most peaceful and calm people.
And also fortune tellers. If you think it's just a tourist gimmick, you've never been to a camp. Because a fortune teller is not an entertainer, she's an institution. A fortune teller used to be a psychologist, a matchmaker, and a local Google. Some came to learn about love, some came to learn about the future, and some came to confirm what they had already decided. Almost everyone is the daughter of the previous one. Knowledge is passed down from mother to daughter, and with this knowledge comes influence. Some say that certain fortune tellers can even sway the Baron's decisions, not because they cast spells, but because everyone fears them and a little bit believes in them. In most cultures, a wedding is about love for the Roma. Like it's a deal, a contract, a show of strength, and also very expensive PR. Marriages happen early, very early, usually at 12, 13, or 14, because the sooner a girl gets married, the less chance she has of spoiling herself. This is a kind of insurance for the family and for their reputation. Everything is decided by the parents. They don't look into the children's eyes, but into their wallets and last names. After that comes a huge celebration, not just for one day, but for 3, 5, or even a week. Everyone is invited: relatives, acquaintances, neighbors, and even those they haven't spoken to in 10 years. The bride is covered in gold from head to toe. Dresses are brighter than those at the Dubai wedding. Dancing, music, and gifts ranging from a TV to a microwave. The main thing is to make it clear this is not the ordinary family. Because a wedding here is not about they love each other, it's about look who we are. Marriage at 13, giving birth at 14. Because for many communities, this is not a wild phenomenon. It is part of the cycle. And by 25, you're already a grandmother. Some families see it as a form of protection for the girl. They marry her off early, so she doesn't have time to do something wrong. Because family honor is something that cannot be washed away. And in a culture where the community outweighs the individual, reputation is more important than happiness, and so the chain continues. After the wedding, The next big celebration in Roma life is usually a funeral. In most cultures, a funeral is about grief, silence, and tears. For the Roma, it's more complicated and louder. The body is treated with the utmost respect, washed with herbal infusions, dressed in bright clothes, adorned as if for a celebration. Because that's exactly what it is, the final celebration. Between death and burial, there are several days of memorials, and these are not quiet vigils by candlelight. They're filled with singing, dancing, and loud farewells. Relatives laugh, recall good times, and drink to the departed as if they were still alive. And then, the tomb. It can take a week to be built. Not everyone gets one, of course, but if the family has money, it will be a marble-clad concrete chamber with a whole room for the deceased. Alongside it go a phone, watch, money, cigarettes, alcohol, a pillow, a blanket, and sometimes even furniture or a TV. PlayStation in a coffin is no joke. If a person loved gaming, the console went with them, because you have to live somehow in the next world. Such funerals can cost $10,000, $30,000, or even $100,000. These are real numbers. For many families, it is a matter of honor to bury with dignity, to show love, to prove the person mattered, and sometimes simply to not be worse than the others. Today, Roma can be found in almost every country in Europe. Even by the most modest estimates, there are about 18 million worldwide. Around 10 million of them are in Europe. The largest number are in Romania and Bulgaria, and it was from these countries that, after joining the EU, a new wave began. The borders opened, visa-free travel was in action, and Europe accepted everyone. Along with the tourists, the camps moved as well. And now about the places where Roma live in compact communities. The unofficial capital is the Moldovan city of Soroca. There are palaces with columns, balconies, domes, Greek statues, stucco, and even a replica of the US Capitol. Huge fences, gilding, and mosaics, and behind the fence, dirt, dust, and total disrepair. Architecture without an architect. But this is not just a style, it is a demonstration of status, and although most of these houses are unfinished, the owners still proudly show them off. Most of the residents have left to work across Europe, but during holidays, especially Easter or International Roma Day, April 8th, everyone comes back and life in this strange neighborhood comes to life. People gather from all over to celebrate, to show off, and to see their loved ones. But speaking of luxury, next to the Gypsy Soroca in Moldova stands another capital of gilded bad taste, Buzescu, a small town in Romania that looks like a mix of Versailles, Gwangju, Istanbul, and a bit of drag queen kitsch all dumped on one hill. Buzescu is a city where a palace is not a home but a status symbol. And the stranger it is, the higher your social level. Huge facades, stucco, domes, columns, crown-shaped roofs, and heart-shaped windows. On the pediments are the Versace, Mercedes, and Louis Vuitton logos. This is not a joke. And the funniest thing is that almost no one lives there. It's all a show. A demonstration. Like, look how much money I have. I don't even live in this house. Inside, it's often empty or there's an old bed and a fridge from the 90s because the whole point is on the outside. And here's another detail, like, many of these houses are officially considered unfinished. And do you know why? Because until the house is completed, property taxes don't apply. That is why many people deliberately do not install windows or lay tiles. That's how they live, in unfinished houses. This, by the way, is a brilliant survival hack. Give the state nothing and make it gold-plated. But that is not the only image of modern Roma life. There is another, the Lunik 9 ghetto in the Slovak city of Kosice. It's the most famous Roma ghetto in Europe. According to official data, there are 6.5 thousand residents there. According to unofficial data, it is closer to 10,000. In one apartment, there can be 10 to 15 people. There is no water, no electricity, and no gas, because no one pays for it. Everything has been cut off. The garbage is not collected. Diseases include hepatitis, scabies, diarrhea. Sometimes even buses don't go there. Drivers are paid extra for the risk, and reality often looks harsh. Society perceives refusal to integrate as a provocation. And those who want to change something are either forced to completely break away from their world or remain stuck in the same loop from which escape becomes harder and harder. So, who are the Roma? A people without a state, without a single language, without a passport to the world, but with a centuries-long history. They survived where others disappeared. They were burned, hanged, expelled, and assimilated, but they remained. And they continue to live the way they want to, not the way someone else wants them to. The world has long tried to fix them, to teach them, to settle them down, to make them normal. But there is a catch. They do not want to be normal in our sense of this word. They have their own normal, their own truth, their own logic, their own family where an outsider is not considered one of their own even after 10 years. The story of the Roma is a story about how easy it is to become an outcast.